What happens when a royal guest faces off against two of daytime television's most controversial hosts? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar on The View, leading to one of the most explosive confrontations in talk show history. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a complete meltdown that had viewers reaching for their remotes while social media erupted with reactions. Before we dive into this story, make sure to hit subscribe and drop a comment because you won't believe what happens when royal protocol meets daytime drama. The atmosphere in the View studio was already charged with tension. As Prince Harry walked onto the set, what should have been a routine appearance to promote his latest charitable initiative quickly turned into a battleground of accusations, interruptions, and barely contained hostility. Cameras rolled, the audience was packed, and even the production team could not have predicted the verbal warfare about to erupt. From the moment Prince Harry settled into his chair, something felt off. Whoopi Goldberg's usually warm welcome seemed forced, her smile failing to reach her eyes as she shuffled through her notes with unusual aggression. Joy Behar sat beside her, a familiar smirk on her lips, the same expression she wears when she senses conflict. The other co-hosts faded into the background, sensing this was going to be Whoopi and Joy's show. So, Prince Harry, Whoopi began. Her voice edged in a way that immediately put the audience on alert. You're here to talk about your new mental health initiative, but I think we need to address the elephant in the room first. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. A lot of Americans are wondering why we should listen to mental health advice from someone who has spent the last few years publicly criticizing his own family. The question hit like a sledgehammer. Prince Harry's composure wavered for a moment, jaw tightening as he processed it. The studio fell silent except for the low hum of cameras capturing every This wasn't the soft interview his team had been promised. I'm sorry, Whoopi, Harry replied, his British accent more pronounced under stress. But I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. Speaking truth about family dysfunction isn't trashing anyone, it's about trying to break cycles of harm. Joy Behar jumped in before Harry could finish, voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, please, you've made millions selling out your grandmother, your father, and your brother, and now you want to lecture Americans about mental health. The audacity is something else. Harry gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles whitening as he fought to stay composed. Joy, with all due respect, you're completely mischaracterizing everything I've said. I've never sold out anyone. I've shared my truth about growing up in an institution that prioritizes image over the well-being of its members. Your truth, Whoopi interjected, voice rising. What about your father's truth? William's truth? What about the taxpayers who funded your privileged life for decades before you decided to profit from your trauma? What was meant to be a conversation about mental health advocacy had devolved into a coordinated attack on his character. The audience sat in stunned silence, many shifting uncomfortably as they witnessed what felt more like an interrogation than an interview. I came here in good faith, Harry said, voice tighter now, to talk about helping people struggling with mental health. Instead, you're ambushing me with talking points that sound like they came straight from British tabloids. Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ambushing you. This is journalism. Harry, maybe you're not used to it because you've been doing puff pieces and paid interviews where everyone kisses your ring. But this is America, and we ask the hard questions here. Harry's face flushed with anger. Journalism. This isn't journalism. This is a hit job. You made up your minds about me before I even walked through that door. Whoopi pounced on his defensive response. We've made up our minds. We're responding to your own words, your actions. You wrote a book throwing your family under the bus. You did interviews accusing them of racism, and now you sit here playing the victim when people call you out. Tension in the studio was palpable. Camera operators zoomed in, sensing something explosive was building. The other co-hosts looked like deer in headlights, unsure whether to intervene. The audience whispered among themselves, visibly uncomfortable with the hostile turn the interview had taken. Harry's media training was tested to its limits. Every instinct told him to walk away, but he was trapped live on national television with two veteran hosts who had no intention of letting up. You know what's really rich? Joy continued. Voice shriller, you talk about breaking cycles of harm, but what about the harm you've caused? To your grandmother in her final years, to your brother, who lost his brother and best friend, to your father, who's been painted as a monster when all he's ever done is love you. Each accusation landed like a physical blow. Harry's breathing grew heavier, his face flushing deeper with every passing second. The prince who had served in Afghanistan, who had faced Taliban fighters, was now being methodically dismantled by two daytime talk show hosts on live television. That's enough, Harry said, his voice low and edged with danger. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know my family. You don't understand the dynamics, and you certainly don't know what it's like to grow up in that environment. But Whoopi and Joy sensed weakness, and they weren't backing down. The confrontation had reached a critical point, and everyone in the studio could feel something about to break. The moment was approaching fast, and whatever came next would shock everyone watching. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smirk crossing her face as she savored the discomfort she had created. Look, Harry, we're not trying to attack you personally, but when you put yourself out there as a public figure making these claims, you have to expect push. You can't throw stones and then cry foul when people throw them back. That was the spark. Harry's composure finally shattered, his voice rising sharply and forcing the entire studio to sit straighter. Throw stones. Throw stones. Are you serious right now? I shared my experience growing up in a family where my mother died because of media harassment, where I watched my wife be torn apart by the same press that killed my mother. And you're sitting here acting like I'm the problem. The raw emotion in his voice was undeniable, but instead of empathy, joy escalated with even more venom. Oh, here we go again with the Diana card. Your mother has been dead for over 25 years. Harry, at some point, you need to stop using her death as an excuse for every bad decision you make. The audience audibly gasped. Several people in the front row looked genuinely stunned that Joy had gone there. Even crew members exchanged uneasy glances. But Joy wasn't finished. And don't even get me started on Megan. She knew exactly what she was signing up for when she married into that family. She's not some innocent victim. She's a former actress who saw an opportunity and took it. Harry's hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or emotional overload, it was impossible to tell. How dare you, he said. How dare you sit there and talk about my wife like that? You don't know her. You don't know what she went through. And you have absolutely no right to minimize the racism and harassment she faced. Whoopi jumped back in, her voice taking on a mocking, particularly cruel tone. Racism? Really? We're playing that card too. Megan is biracial. Sure, but she lived as a white woman in Hollywood for years. She only started talking about being black when it became convenient for her narrative. The studio fell into a deadly silence. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or cut to commercial. This had gone far beyond a heated interview. This was character assassination, broadcast live to millions. Harry's face was completely flushed now, his breathing rapid and shallow. You have no idea what you're talking about. None. You're repeating the same ignorant, racist rhetoric that drove us out of the country in the first place. This is exactly why we left, because of people like you who think they know our story better than we do. Joy fired back immediately. People like us. What's that supposed to mean? Harry, are you calling us racist now? Because we're asking tough questions. Because we're not buying into your victim narrative. Harry was unraveling, trapped in a storm of accusations and provocations clearly designed to push him over the edge. I'm calling you ignorant. I'm calling you cruel. And I'm calling you exactly the kind of people who make honest conversations about difficult topics impossible. Whoopi stood up from her chair, something she rarely did, and pointed directly at him. Honest conversations. You want honesty? Let's be honest about the fact that you've built a career complaining about how hard your life is while living in mansions and flying private jets. Let's be honest about the fact that you hurt everyone who ever loved you just to make money. The venom in her voice was shocking, even by the View's standards. Harry was visibly trembling, his expression cycling through rage, pain, disbelief, and something dangerously close to despair. You're sick, he said. Both of you are sick. This isn't an interview, this is psychological torture. You're attacking my dead mother, attacking my wife, attacking me, and calling it journalism. Joy laughed again, that same cruel laugh that had echoed throughout the confrontation. Psychological torture. Oh my God, Harry, you really do think you're special, don't you? This is a talk show, not a therapy session. If you can't handle basic questions about your public statements, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The breaking point had been crossed. Harry was no longer the polished royal who had walked onto the set half an hour earlier. He was a man pushed beyond his limits. And everyone in the studio could see it. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, somehow more threatening than his shouting. Basic questions. You think what you've been doing here is basic? You've spent the last half hour attacking everything I care about, my mother, my wife, my children's future. Nothing is off limits to you, is it? Whoopi sensed she had him exactly where she wanted him and moved in for the final blow. Your children's future. Let's talk about that, Joy said. What kind of future are you giving them by teaching that running away solves every problem? What kind of legacy is it when family loyalty means nothing compared to money and fame? That was the final straw. Harry shot up from his chair so violently it rolled backward, nearly toppling over. Don't you dare bring my children into this. Don't you dare. His voice echoed through the studio, making several audience members jump. Security at the edges of the set stepped forward, unsure if they needed to intervene. The other co-hosts sat frozen, realizing the situation had gone too far, but unwilling or unable to stop it. Joy didn't back down. Why not? You've involved them in everything else. You've put them in the public eye, made them part of your narrative. They're fair game now. Harry, that's what you chose when you turned family drama into a business. Harry was breathing heavily, sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. You're monsters. Both of you are monsters. This is why people hate this show. This is why your ratings are in the toilet. You're not journalists, you're bullies with a platform. Whoopi's expression darkened at the ratings jab. Our ratings? You want to talk ratings? At least we don't pay people to listen. At least we don't buy our way onto podcasts or pay for positive coverage. The accusation was so inflammatory that some crew members looked shocked. Harry's response was immediate, his rage barely contained. That's a lie, and you know it. You're making things up now because you've run out of real attacks. This is libel, defamation. Joy shrugged theatrically. Prove it. Sue us. Oh, I too can't. Because you'd have to show damages. How do you damage a reputation already in the gutter? The cruelty was breathtaking. Harry trembled, scanning the studio as if he couldn't believe what was happening. The audience watched in horrified fascination as a member of the British royal family unraveled live on television. This ends now, Harry said, voice tight. This sick, twisted performance ends right now. But Whoopi and Joy weren't done. They had him on the ropes, determined to push him down. What came next would push Harry past the point of no return. Whoopi's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction as she delivered what she intended as a knockout blow. You know what really bothers people about you? It's not that you left the royal family, that's fine, if that's what you needed. It's how you did it. The lies, the manipulation, the constant playing of the victim, while living in luxury most people can only dream of. She paused, letting her words sink in, then continued with more venom. But what really gets me is how you've turned your children into props in your revenge fantasy against your family. Those kids will grow up knowing their father chose money and fame over grandparents, their uncle, their cousins. How's that for breaking cycles of harm? The attack on his role as a father was the final trigger. Harry's face went from red to pale white, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was low, dangerous, and the studio leaned in to listen. You just crossed a line you can never uncross. Attack me. Fine, attack my wife. Disgusting. But my children are off limits. Using them as weapons shows exactly what kind of people you are. Joy, seemingly oblivious to the powder keg beside her, poured more gasoline on the fire. Oh, spare us, Harry, the righteous father act. Your kids are already weapons for you. Every interview, every book, every statement, they justify your choices. Don't pretend you're protecting them while exploiting them. That was it. Harry exploded with a fury no one in the studio had ever seen. Exploiting them? I'm exploiting them. You sit here every day tearing apart families, destroying reputations, spreading lies and hatred, and lecture me about exploitation. You're parasites. Both of you are parasites profiting off others' pain. His voice was so loud several audience members covered their ears. Security moved closer, concerned the situation was spiraling. But Harry wasn't done. Years of frustration poured out. You want to know what exploitation looks like? It's sitting behind that desk pretending to be journalists while destroying anyone who doesn't fit your narrow view. Using your platform to spread hatred and division while pretending to care about justice. You're hypocrites of the highest order, and everyone watching knows it. Whoopi stood again, matching his intensity. Hypocrites. You're the hypocrite. You preached privacy while selling your family's secrets. You talked about service while abandoning duties. You claimed to care about mental health while destroying your own family's emotional well-being. The shouting match was now in full swing, both sides screaming over each other. Joy jumped in, her voice shrill and cutting. And let's not forget the racism claims. You and Meghan threw around accusations with zero proof, zero specifics, and zero accountability. You nearly destroyed the monarchy with your lies, and now you play victim when people call you out. Harry's response was immediate and volcanic. Lies. You think racism is a lie? You think the death threats against my wife were lies? You think the coordinated campaign to destroy her reputation was a lie? You're proving exactly what we were talking about. This is exactly the behavior we tried to escape. The confrontation had descended into chaos. All pretense of this being a television interview was gone. It was now a full-blown verbal war with no rules and no mercy. The other co-hosts sat in stunned silence. The audience was shocked, and the crew looked like they wanted to disappear. Whoopi, her face contorted with rage, decided to go nuclear. You know the real tragedy. Harry, your mother would be ashamed of you. Diana would be disgusted by what you've become. She dedicated her life to service, to helping others, to building bridges, and you've done nothing but burn bridges and cash checks. You've dishonored her memory in ways that are truly sickening. The studio fell silent. Using Diana's memory as a weapon had gone far beyond acceptable. Even Joy looked uncomfortable. Harry stood still, his face cycling through emotions too fast to track. When he finally spoke, his voice was eerily calm, somehow more terrifying than his previous shouting. That's it, we're done here. You can sit in your little bubble of hatred and ignorance, but I'm not part of this circus anymore. He yanked off his microphone with such force the clip broke, and it clattered to the floor. You want to know what my mother would think? She'd see exactly the kind of people she spent her life fighting against. Bullies who use power to hurt others. People who profit from pain and call it entertainment. Joy made one last desperate attempt, her voice edging into panic as the interview slipped away. Oh, So you're running away again? Just like you ran from your responsibilities, just like you ran from your family. Running away is what you do best, isn't it, Harry? Harry turned to face her, his eyes ice. I'm not running away. I'm walking away from toxicity. There's a difference, though I wouldn't expect you to understand. You've built your career on toxicity. He looked directly into the main camera, addressing the audience rather than the hosts who had tormented him for the past hour. To everyone watching, I want you to see what I just experienced. This is what passes for journalism on this show. They attacked my dead mother. They attacked my wife. They attacked my children. And they called it entertainment. His voice remained steady, though the emotion underneath was unmistakable. If you're struggling with mental health, dealing with family trauma, or trying to break cycles of harm in your life, don't let people like this convince you that your pain doesn't matter. Don't let them tell you speaking your truth makes you weak or wrong. Whoopi tried to interrupt, but Harry silenced her with a commanding gesture. I came here to talk about helping people, and instead, I was subjected to an hour of psychological abuse. That says everything you need to know about this show and these hosts. He turned and walked toward the exit, his security detail flanking him. Just before reaching the door, he stopped and turned back one last time. The studio held its breath. You know the most pathetic part? Harry said, his voice carrying across the silent room. You actually think you won today. You think tearing me down makes you strong, smart, or relevant, but all you've done is show America who you really are, and that will follow you far longer than this interview will follow me. With that, Prince Harry walked out of the View studio, leaving behind complete devastation. Whoopi and Joy sat in their chairs, suddenly looking smaller, uncertain. The audience remained in stunned silence, many visibly disturbed by what they had witnessed. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing the aftermath of one of the most controversial moments in talk show history. Joy fumbled for words, her usual sharp tongue gone. Whoopi simply stared at the door, as if unable to believe what had happened. The production team scrambled to fill the remaining time, but the damage was done. What was meant to be a routine celebrity interview had turned into a historic disaster. The View had captured confrontation, but at what cost? As the credits rolled and studio lights dimmed, one thing was clear. This was a train wreck no one involved would forget, and no viewer would ever look at the show the same way again.